Welcome to episode 7 of the MJ Sports Podcast. I'm Mark and I'm joined by Jonas, and this is your week of sports and review.
Sports. Woo! And we are back once again after just a short little 5-day rest for us, and we are here to talk about the good old sports talk or something like that.
That's right. We're hopefully back on a more consistent schedule of Wednesdays now here.
Yes.
You know, life kind of hits you sometimes, so, we try to be flexible, but we're back on Wednesday this week, so you'll have a little bit more timely sports news.
That's right. That's all you can ask for in the sports world. Timely sports news, baby.
Exactly. Well, do you want to start it off with the MLB here, since it's over?
I know it is kind of depressing because I think this was one of, I'm not in favor for reducing the season length, but I do think overall this was one of the more exciting seasons of the past few MLB years, and I mean the playoffs really couldn't have gone really too much more interesting. I mean, you had the first wild card round, full wild card round in baseball history, and I mean you had some upsets. The Marlins look like they shouldn't even be in the playoffs. Get in, beat the Cubs. I mean the Astros have a losing record and are one game away from the World Series. Tampa Bay kind of comes out of nowhere. Maybe the shortened season helps them. And, I mean, the Dodgers, after 5 years of losing in the World Series, getting upset, being depressed as Dodgers fans, and they finally buy themselves a championship.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot you said there. I want to take it back real quick to just how exciting this baseball season was, because it's a baseball season like none other, especially when you think about the length. There's definitely never been another time where every game mattered nearly as much. When you're talking a 162-game season, you can have your, 10-game skids, 11, 12-game skids. Like, every team seems to have one or two of those throughout the season, but you can get past that because you've got so many more games. In a 60-game season, we saw some teams that couldn't overcome that. We saw a lot of players who were stars that just never really could get over that hump because the pressure was on. So we saw some unfortunate stat lines, namely Christian Yelich. But even if you think about someone like Cody Bellinger from the Dodgers, they won the World Series, but he didn't have a good season really at all. Low batting average compared to years past. I mean, the power was still there, but, you kind of got to take a lot of these stats with a grain of salt. But, and you got to bring up some of the rule changes too. Namely, this is the first time we saw the minimum of a 3-batter minimum for relief pitchers, which probably impacted Tampa Bay, the way Tampa Bay probably would have managed the game a little bit in some of their circumstances. I know they like to play matchups as much as anybody, so the Brewers are another team who like to play those. Overall, though, I don't think that really impacted teams quite as much as you would have thought. 3 batters, it does take away some opportunities for some of those guys who are, mainly a left, someone brought in to handle a good lefty or something like that. But it just makes them have to learn how to pitch against multiple types of batters. And I mean, I personally am not as opposed to it anymore as I was at the beginning of the season. Same thing with the NLDH. That's something I'm personally actually now in favor of. over the last couple of years, I've generally warmed up to it a little bit, and now that I've seen it in action, I think it's something that would be beneficial to adopt going forward. And then the rule of the only one that I think needs a little bit of adjustment, and I know partially that was for this season because you didn't want to have 18-inning games in such a compressed, tight schedule, was the putting the runner at second in extra innings. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. Personally, I don't mind seeing it, but I don't want to see it right at the beginning of the 10th inning. I'd like to wait a little bit more, maybe like the 14th inning, something like the 14th, 15th inning. Just because I feel like at that point you're seeing a lot of subs get into the game. You might start getting to the point where maybe some position players have to think about pitching. I'd be curious to hear what some of your thoughts are on the regular season.
Yeah, well, just to start off with that rule, honestly, I don't mind that rule because I mean, they got rid of it in the postseason, so I really don't mind putting that runner at second base for the regular season, but obviously not for the postseason. I think as far as the three batter minimum, it's not the rule that I necessarily have a quarry with. It's the reasoning for the rule. So originally it's, let's reduce game time by having it be three batters or less or to the end of the inning. And it just, to me, it didn't shorten the game length. Now, if you want to argue, oh, this rule makes it good for strategy, the pitchers have to be able to pitch to, both, handedness players. And, if you want to say it makes it a little bit easier for the batters, and the batting team, okay, but I just think the original reason for the rule to shorten games, it didn't really shorten games at all, in my opinion. I don't know like the official number is on that, but just from watching so many games this year, probably more than at least more other teams than the Rangers games. To me, it just felt like what's the point of having this to just reduce time? And yeah, I don't know. I would say if you want to keep it for the regular season, sure. I think they should just trash it in the postseason. I think it's much more interesting to see the batter have to hit off of a guy that they really shouldn't, be able to hit. I don't know. I think the strategy of it, just having like a one batter specialist, like the Dodgers had that. I forget his name, but they had that one pitcher that was supposed to just come in and get Juan Soto out, and then for some reason they didn't do that in the in the fifth game last year. But I don't know. I don't really like that rule. I've been saying for years, add the DH. My opinion on that. And for anyone out there, I've been saying they should add the DH for years. And I've also been saying for probably 4 or 5 years to continue to expand the playoff teams. And we've talked about this several times. I think both of us are in favor of that. So, not necessarily have to return our steps there. But yeah, I mean, a wild regular season. I don't know if you have too much more to add from the regular season, but if you want, you can say what you will about, I guess, maybe the World Series. Nah.
Well, I did pick the Dodgers, so I want to make that clear. I know it wasn't really that impressive of a pick because, they were favorites going in, I think. But, Tampa Bay, they put up a fight. I mean, you kind of got to look. What's shocking to me, and I don't remember exactly what the full prorated salaries are, but I do remember, I think the Rays prorated, like, team as a whole, I think their salary was like $27 million.
I know it was less than Garrett Cole.
Yeah, it's
as a whole team.
and you think about the Dodgers, who, they've got Mookie Betts, they've got Clayton Kershaw, they've got Justin Turner. I mean, a lot of those guys, they make a good chunk of change. So, I mean, you kind of have the big spenders versus the versus the I don't know what you want to call the Rays, but
Yeah.
The Rays get crafty, I guess. You know, small market, they do what they got to do, but you know, it just shows that even if you're not a big market team, you can still have some success. Unfortunately, I hate to see it, but I don't think, you know, you probably won't see with a team like the Rays them able to hold on to all of these players in the future. I mean, my guess is if Azarena can keep it up going into next season, he might have a nice little payday coming his way. But
Yes, I'm
they
sure he will.
they also have the advantage of they use every bit of their roster. They platoon more than about anybody I can think of. I mean, they've got like 4 different people they'll put at first base, so and they'll move people all around. So, I mean, but they do what they can. I mean, I don't think anyone expected them to beat the Dodgers. I was just happy to see it at least go to a game 6. Um, I will say, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but um, you know, I think the big thing everybody's talking about. Well, there's two things regarding the World Series. One of them after last night's game, but first the controversial decision to remove Blake Snell, who was absolutely dealing from the game, basically just because he gave up a single. Um, you know, the guy was missing bats all game. Dodgers players didn't look like they had any clue what was coming next. And he gives up a single in, was it the 5th inning, I believe?
Yes, the 5th inning.
Yeah, and Cash ends up taking him out, and you know, of course, we all knew what was going to happen when that happened, and I don't remember what the name of the reliever is that they brought in, but he gave up a double, and then he threw a wild pitch, which allowed the tying run to score, and things went downhill from there. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways you can look at this because Snell all year hadn't pitched a full 6 innings in the game, which, you know, if you want to make an excuse there, that's like, well, you know, we take him out because he never pitched 6 innings for the whole, you know, during the whole season, yada yada. You know, it's like, it's almost like, why didn't you let him pitch longer? Like, once they kind of knew they had the 1 seed, why not throw him out there for like the last couple games of the season, ramp it up, just let him go 6 innings, even if he gives up like 4 or 5 runs, just let him get to maybe, you know, 100 pitches, 110 pitches, his last 2 or 3 starts. Yeah, I don't know, you know, that's I think that's one thing. This whole situation solidifies, you know, to me that an analytic-based team will never beat a team that is willing to spend more money and just have better talent, better talent. Like I don't, no matter what analytic numbers you have and all this, it's kind of just like it's kind of like sports betting almost to me, where, you know, to be like a good sports bettor, you have to, I think it's like 56, 57%. You have to get like that many right. So obviously you're going to be getting a ton wrong, and I just think with an analytical based method, you're just going to end up getting a couple things wrong here and there that is not going to be able to overcome the talent gap that I think the Dodgers, you know, clearly had over the Rays. And yeah, taking Snell out, it's one of those things, new age baseball, old age baseball. If you go by new age, it's like, well, take him out. If you go old school, like Dave Roberts tends to do, it's like you leave him in because that's what your gut tells you to do, and it's Game 6 of the World Series. So it's crazy. It's crazy. It probably made Rays fans want to go drink some, and I don't know, maybe that's what, you know, Rob Manfred was doing after the game, or the other maybe big story coming out of this.
yeah, I want to jump back in on the Rays before we cover that.
Oh,
But,
okay, okay.
you know,
That's,
you made the comparison to new age and old age baseball, and I'll agree, although I think with Cash's comments after because here's the deal. Snell only had a pitch count of, I believe, 71 when they pulled him out, okay? I think it'd make more sense to pull him in the fifth inning if he had like a 100 pitch count, something like that. Then you can understand that a little bit more. But like a 70 pitches, I mean, he's your ace. I mean, it's the World Series. You're playing to force a game seven. I mean, you have got to let your ace go out there and just deal the ball. And he was obviously questioned about that after the game, and his statement went somewhere around along the lines of, "Well, that's the way we've been doing it all year. That's our system, and that's what we were going to do, regardless of the outcome." And basically, the Rays system is don't allow your pitchers to be seen a third time by batters. I don't even know if I'd necessarily call that New Age baseball, because I think that's a little bit more extreme than New Age baseball. I think that's just Rays baseball, and they've proven to be very progressive with the way they try to do things. With the opener strategy. I mean, they're still trying to use the opener, in games out there during the regular season. So, I think that's just a Rays thing, and I think that did kill them. And I absolutely agree with you. You can get analytical if you want, but if you don't have the talent on the field to back it up in a 7-game series, you're not going to win. I mean, the Dodgers just severely. I mean, they have so much more talent than a lot of teams in the league, but including the Rays. I mean,
Yeah. Well, just going back real quick before we get to, Fat Rob, it doesn't make any sense that you don't want your pitchers to be seen a third time in, through the lineup, considering you're playing a 7-game series and this is the second game he's pitched in the series. Like, if you're going to get technical, this would be like the 5th time in less than a week that he's been through the lineup, 4th or 5th time. So I don't know. I just think it's dumb. Like, because during the regular season, obviously you can say that because you don't have the same pitcher pitching, to the same team really, like after like 3 or 4 days. For the most part, I know sometimes it's possible, but I don't know. Just kind of stupid. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about what happened after the game. Well, the first thing we all got to see live was Rob Manfred getting booed, which I think a lot of fans probably enjoyed. I know Trevor Bauer certainly did.
Yeah,
he put out
joke.
he put out a tweet about it being art or poetry or something like that. Rob Manfred's getting booed there at the end of this season by the 11,000 fans that he allowed in. So I thought that was pretty funny. No, but the big story was Justin Turner got pulled from the game. He had a positive COVID test, and he was told, and the organization was told, that he was supposed to remain, and I don't think it was the clubhouse, but they essentially had some place in the stadium that he was required to remain. He wasn't supposed to go back out on the field, come in contact with any of the players, because obviously he had a positive test. So that makes sense. Well, at the end of the game, if you noticed, watching the celebration, Justin Turner comes out on the field, which was not a good look for baseball at all. Not a good look for Ron Manfred either. And essentially, from what I saw, he was pleading with security and the other people to be allowed back out there to celebrate with his teammates. And actually, it sounded like people in the Dodgers organization were also pleading and trying to support him in his case to go back out on the field, because he's been a part of this team all year, and obviously I would hate to be put in his shoes and be told that I'm not allowed to go celebrate with my team that just won the World Series, after I put in all my hard effort during the year. So I get where he's coming from, wanting to go out there, but the fact that they allowed him out there, um, some people are going to get in trouble.
I mean, I guess some people are going to get in trouble, but like, he looked fine to me. I mean, obviously, who knows if he was showing any symptoms or whatnot. I don't know. I don't really care. I feel like, I mean, we got to the end of the season, and pretty much it seemed like just about everybody, besides maybe just like some memes here and there, didn't really care too much about the Astros since they lost. Obviously, if they would have beat the Rays, I think people would have been like, had an outcry, but I don't know. It seemed like with this whole quarantine thing, everyone forgot about the Astros thing. I think you give this like a week, baseball's over, there's no more games. I don't think anybody's going to care.
Well, I'm not saying a lot, personally, I think the issue is more so because I think originally what they said is we just want to get him out there for the team picture and then we'll take him away. I think the issue came more so with him going out because he was still hugging people. I think they said he was out there for 20 minutes or something like that. It's just from a press point of view, it's bad for the league. Baseball's already in a hole. I saw they lost $3.1 billion this season, which isn't great because the league's already had to combat some ratings issues and financial issues over the last couple years. Granted, every league is losing money this year, but you know,
That's just, I think there's been so many sports going on, because really, I mean, up until what I'm not sure quite if the Stanley Cup ran into the baseball playoffs at all. I mean, the NFL is going to dominate, obviously. I mean, the NBA, I think lost like 1.6 billion or something like that. I think every sports league besides the NFL probably is losing money.
well, I don't know. The NFL could still lose money. Um,
Well, yeah, I
because
mean, they still could, but I think they would have the best chance of not losing money.
well, right, because the thing that really hurt the other leagues was the TV contracts. Because obviously, if you're missing a chunk of your schedule with baseball, you're missing over 100 games of your schedule. That really affects your TV contracts. Um, Obviously, fans purchasing tickets and items at games. You know, that obviously brings in a lot of revenue. But yes, in comparison, because the NFL is able to play their full season so far, I agree. I think they're going to have the opportunity to lose the least amount of money.
Yeah. Well, at least for now, that's all I have on baseball for the time being. Hopefully, the off season moves quickly. Obviously, I think we want to savor the NFL, but I'll be excited to see what happens in the off season. I know the Rangers have some players that they need
Well,
to consider doing
could
stuff with.
we could see some moves happening fairly quickly because the deadline to start signing players, the restriction to start signing players is off 5 days after the World Series. So technically,
Yeah,
we could start seeing some deals coming in at the end of this week, I think.
I'll be interested to see like what the Rangers do with Lance Lynn, Joey Gallo, Shin-Soo Choo. Ideally, we would have traded those guys this season, but what are you gonna do? But that's that might be a talk for another day.
Yes,
So,
yes. Well, I think it's time to move on a little bit to the NFL. Um, got
oh,
got a couple storylines here.
some
We can start in Dallas, and I'll let
some
Jonas
very
talk
very
about this a little bit. But after this last loss, a lot of people are talking Is it time for Dallas to move on from Mike McCarthy? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Jonas.
Uh, some very, very, very depressing, uh, week for the Cowboys. But this is hard for me, especially because to me, whenever this whole process was going on, Mike McCarthy was the second best option to hire, in my opinion. Um, and the first was good old Lincoln Riley, the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. But before I get into that too much, I'll keep talking about McCarthy a little bit here. And I can't say it's time to get rid of him after 6 games. I think there is some things that we need to do. A would be get rid of Kellen Moore as a play caller. There's no reason to have him call plays. I mean, he played like 7 games in the NFL for us that year. Romo was injured in 2015. I mean, he didn't look bad as a quarterback. He looked like, he could have a decent, football mind. But currently with the personnel we have, to me, it hasn't seemed like he's adjusted very well. Like last year, whenever we should have been running the ball more, he throws the ball a ton. This year, it's like we have an offensive line. Elliott is playing terrible. Last week, he decides to run the ball a whole lot, even though Washington was just was just absolutely obliterating our second string offensive line. So I don't think he's been able to flow with play calling very well. I get rid of Kellen Moore as play caller. Mike McCarthy take over. I'd get rid of Mike Nolan, our defensive coordinator. Clearly that hasn't worked. I would go back to our old scheme, our old 4-3 scheme. I think it's better for the way our team is set up. But I think we need, I don't know, I just think Mike Nolan is kind of washed as a defensive coordinator. I also think our defensive players are just trash, and that might be why there's been so many complaints coming out of the locker room, is they think they are better than they are. I mean, we really have like 2 good, we have Jaden Smith, Van Der Esch. That rookie, Trevon Diggs, looks, he's looked pretty decent for a rookie corner in the NFL. But besides that, and Lawrence actually does have like the second most quarterback pressures in the league this year. He might not have the sacks to show for it or the tackles to show for it, but I think I still don't think he's worth the contract, but at least he's playing decent. But yeah, I just don't. Our defensive players are terrible. Defensive coordinator's terrible. Kellen Moore can't call plays. Our backup quarterbacks are. There's just nothing going right for us. I don't think you can blame it solely on McCarthy right now. You got to see what he has to offer going forward, at least into next year. I think if next year we are 4-12 and Dak plays the whole year, because I'm assuming we're probably going to sign Dak just based off these last 2 games. Yeah, you got to give him at least next year. But if we're absolute hot trash next year again, 5-11, I say fire him. Try to get Lincoln Riley. Just offer Lincoln Riley like the most ludicrous NFL contract, especially with the success Cliff Kingsbury has been having in the NFL so far. I don't know. I think these new age younger coaches are the way to go going forward in the NFL.
Yeah, I gotta say, I definitely think it's too early to just move on from Mike McCarthy. He's won a Super Bowl. Like, he's had plenty of good seasons in Green Bay. It's hard to tell, what blame to put on at the end of his tenure in Green Bay, how much of it was on him, how much of it was on the organization as a whole, if any of it was on, his relationship with Rodgers. But I agree. I actually think it would, I like your idea of giving play calling back to McCarthy. That was something he actually, he gave away in Green Bay at one point. And when that happened, our offense just dipped, and he ended up taking it back halfway through the season and said he would never give it up again. So I would like to see McCarthy take back the play calling. And granted, you guys have had a lot of injuries. Obviously that doesn't excuse some of the performances out there that you guys have had this season, but I absolutely agree. I think it's too early to move on from Mike McCarthy.
Yeah. I mean, before Dak got hurt, we had been in every game at least. I mean, the Rams are 5-2, and we lost to them by 3. Seattle, we had a play at the end of the game that could have won us the game, and so I mean those are, and the Browns. I mean, before Odell had that 50-yard touchdown run with like 2 minutes to go, we're only down by 3, even though it was a terrible first 3 quarters. We somehow came back and got into it a little bit. So I don't know. I think, yeah, it is sad, but I don't know. It's
just a sad division in general.
it's just a sad year, yes.
But
So
well, that's enough of ragging on the Cowboys. We get to do quite a bit of this every week, it seems, but hopefully that changes
yes.
soon.
No, it's time to tank. I don't want to be good. I'd rather just be bad.
I'd like to see you guys get to a mediocre record so you still don't get a great draft pick.
I just want to see the worst possible record win a division. So maybe, I think we do have to win this. We have to beat the Eagles this week, because I think the Eagles will end up winning more games in the long run. So I think you're right. We do need to win this week.
Well, and then you guys can draft another wide receiver in the first round.
Oh, jeez. Well, speaking of wide receiver, just want to throw this out. Well, you know what? I'll leave that little hesitation, step back move for just a little bit towards the end of our NFL discussion. So stick around if you want to hear my interesting wide receiver discussion.
Well, let's progress forward then. We got to see one heck of a game between the Steelers and the Titans. The Titans, who you predicted to go 16-0.
Back to 9-7.
I don't think they go back to 9-7.
No, I don't think they're. Yeah.
I mean, these are two very good teams playing each other, and it showed. We saw a good game. I think the Steelers were just a little bit too much to overcome, but obviously it could have gone either way.
Yeah, I mean, Gostowski has made 3 game-winning field goals for them this year, but he's only 10 for 16. So it's it is sad. It was sad to see him miss that. Roethlisberger kind of fell apart. It seems like the Steelers just falling apart at the end of games, because they get out to this 20-point lead and then just end up winning by 5 points or less. So I guess they're able to hang on, but I feel like one of these games, maybe this next week against the Ravens, that might catch up with them if they just decide to let their foot off the gas. But it'll be interesting. I think both these teams, they could make it to the Super Bowl.
Yes. No, I absolutely agree. Both teams are really good. And, I agree. I think the Steelers' offense is, still sometimes doesn't seem to have it quite together. I mean, that defense, especially, with last year and how they've played this year, that defense is as strong as any defense, but, as long as the offense can maintain moderate consistency, I'd say, I think they can win just about any game.
I think even though they have 4 really good wide receivers, it seems like they don't run the ball enough. I feel like James Conner should be someone who's getting like 25 carries a game.
Well, that would probably be beneficial for Roethlisberger too. Take some of the pressure off of him because, I mean, obviously Roethlisberger isn't quite as sharp as he used to be. So if you take a
Yeah.
little bit of pressure off of him, and you know that would just open the passing game up even more. I mean, you know, with how talented their wide receivers are, and they've got Ebron as well. Like, you know, you start running the ball a little bit more, make them second guess. That opens up the passing game. So I absolutely agree. I think Connor should be getting at least 20 carries a game.
Or at least, you know, if you only give Connor 15 to 20, and then, I mean, you have Benny Snell,
Right.
who's, I mean, you could just give him the balls, you know, 6 to 8 times as well if you don't want to overload Connor. So, uh, yeah. But, I mean, they're only undefeated team left, and they play the Ravens this week, which will be a good game. So, it'll be, it'll be, it'll be wild, I think, to see if they can keep it going.
Yeah,
But,
that's going to be quite an interesting game.
I guess keeping it in the old AFC, something that has stood out to me the past 3 weeks is how bad the Bills are, or at least how bad they've been. You know, maybe not necessarily this whole season, but they are a pass interference call on the Rams away from being 4-3. So, I mean,
I think they peaked a little bit too early.
well, I think people were like, "Oh, Josh Allen is the MVP," and then Josh Allen was like, you know, he was like looking at himself in the mirror one day. He's like, "Am I the MVP?" And then, you know, like the third quarter against the Titans, he was like, "I'm not the MVP." So it's yeah, I mean, they beat the Jets 18-10 on 6 field goals. They can't even score a touchdown. I mean, that's just, you couldn't score a touchdown on the Jets. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I still think. Now, who do you think wins that division?
Look, I think I said this like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said the Bills are going to win the division by proxy of being in one of the worst divisions from the last 20 years as far as having like 4 good teams. You know, and I know like, you know, I am a fan of the NFC East as far as like the whole division, you know, doing well just because the Cowboys are in it. But I mean, the NFC or the AFC East, I mean, over the last 20 years, just terrible as far as having more than like one good team.
Yeah, you can. You know that's probably part of the reason the Patriots have had some of the success they've had. But you know, I don't want to rip on the Patriots too much. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the Bills win this division from just being the most not bad team.
I mean, yeah, I think they're obviously better than everyone in the NFC East, which is also just going to be the not worst team. But yeah, I don't know. It's
they're just a mediocre team to me.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
they can they can be flashy at times, but they they don't really have they don't really have that spark that can take them up to the next level. They're not going to do anything in the postseason or anything like that.
No.
But
Well,
speaking of a
look,
team that's not going to do anything in the postseason, because they're not going to get to the postseason, Falcons choking it again.
yes. Who would have thought the Falcons could actually lose by scoring a touchdown?
Yeah,
They've
that's the most Falcons choke away a game I think you could possibly have.
yeah.
Um,
Now I didn't see that game live, and I saw like a meme, and it was like the Falcons have scored the first game-losing touchdown in NFL history, and I was like, what? I was like, that does not make any sense. I was like, well, it must be NFL memes being stupid again. But yeah, going back and watching it, it was like, oh, yep, the Falcons did it again.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with Gurley. Like, he was coming out of a tackle there. His momentum was carrying him. Obviously, the Lions wanted him to score there. I think a couple Lions defensive players actually said afterwards that we were trying to make him score, and you can see on the replay that there's two Lions players in the shot that are holding their arms up for a touchdown and like pointing towards that he crossed the goal line. So obviously, I mean, as a running back, I gotta think that it's not easy mentally to think, oh, I've got to go down. And I'm wondering if maybe it hit him a little bit too late. And granted, I know he was coming out of a tackle there, so he had momentum. You see a wide open goal line. I mean, it's got to be hard. I mean, fantasy owners were probably happy with the result, but that's a very unfortunate way to lose a game.
Here's the thing: is people are. You say, I've kind of heard that like a lot. Like, well, is momentum coming out of the tackle? Okay, if I am the coach, if I am Matt Ryan, I'm saying we are going to give you the ball, Todd. Don't run more than 5 yards. Like, run 5 yards and fall down. Like, it's not like they're at like the 2 yard line and like he just happened to stumble into there or something. Like the Lions shoved him into the end zone or something. He literally had 10 yards that that he could have just stopped at the 8 yard line and just fell on the ground. It was just so, I mean, just absolute bonehead play, especially by someone who has stopped several times uh, short of the end zone just to like run out clock and stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he does that. I think that's just. And if you're the coaching staff, like I wonder if the coaching staff like was like, don't run into the end zone, or if they were just like, if nobody was thinking about it except for Todd Gurley, right when he was at like the half-inch line.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really doesn't matter. It's honestly probably better that they lost this game. The Falcons should be trying to tank. So,
Maybe that was a strategy because I mean, it looked like Todd Gurley was like he had like a brain lapse, and then he had another brain lapse that like so his first brain lapse was running that far, and then a second brain lapse was like, oh, I should stop before the end zone. But then at the end of it, it was like, no, actually, good job, Todd. You're supposed to score.
yeah, helps my stats.
Yeah.
And it helps us get a better draft pick. So,
Yes.
they're still tanking for Trevor too. I just
Yes.
don't.
Time to get rid of Matt.
Yeah, I'm just not sure they're going to be able to out tank the Jets.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone can.
And I think right now, if I'm
Except for the
Trevor,
Giants.
I'm coming back for my senior year at Clemson. But, um,
Nah.
hey,
Nah. I'm making that money.
well, I guess he's going to get paid regardless. So,
Yeah, but what's the chance the Jets have a better record next year? I know that's like the whole conversation. Look, if Trevor really wanted to, just say you don't like. Just say, okay, I'm not going to play for the Jets. If you have the first pick, draft somebody else, trade it. I don't care, but I'm not going to play for you guys. I mean, that's what Eli Manning did. And if Trevor's, a shell of what Eli Manning was in the NFL, surely he could go to a different team and win at least one Super Bowl.
yeah. Nope, I agree. But obviously Atlanta's a more desirable location just because you've already got your receiving weapons down there. But,
Yeah, I guess.
well, we talked about the Jets being trash, the Falcons being trash. Let's just throw Cam Newton into that conversation.
Yes, let's just keep adding fuel to the fire.
And he pretty much said it himself. I mean, he knows just as much as anybody that he is playing awful football right now. I mean, he looks completely lost like a deer in the headlights out there. I mean, he's throwing balls that hit the ground like 10 feet in front of the wide receiver. Like, it's just horrible.
Yeah, well, maybe if he stopped dressing like a woman, it would help him out. But B, I don't know why anybody was thinking Cam Newton was any different. Like, why do you think the Panthers got rid of him? It's because he cannot throw a football. I've been saying this for like the past 3 years. He's a terrible quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for the Patriots. I mean, he's still their best option. I think. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, obviously, with Jared Stidham wasn't expected to come out of college and be able to start anywhere close to year one. I mean, there's no expectation there. I mean, he's clearly not NFL ready. Brian Hoyer, in his limited time so far this season, wasn't any better than Cam. I mean, and I mean, I think they said that they're rolling with. I mean, there's no expectation that Cam's going to be benched going forward or anything like that, even though he was benched during the game. So we're going to get to see a lot more of Cam, it looks like. I mean, the Patriots are going to have to continue to rely on their running game if they want to have any chance to win games, and just hope Cam can do the bare minimum when it comes to passing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Newton is going to have an okay season this year, but I think, because now everyone thought Matt Ryan was so good, so fantastic. He won the MVP, got his team to a Super Bowl. It's like they had one lucky year, and then now everyone's like, ooh, Matt Ryan looks terrible. It's like people forgot Cam Newton had like one lucky season getting his team to the Super Bowl, and then he gets injured for like 2 years, and people are like, oh yeah, I think Cam Newton still is good. Even though, his MVP season was like 5 years ago. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to keep riding the Cam Newton hate train as well as the Matt Ryan hate train.
Well, I'm just waiting for Sam Bradford to come back and take over the Patriots.
He's taking over the Vikings. The Vikings will make the playoffs.
Oh, that would be phenomenal. So, we've been talking about a lot of trash here. I think it's about time we talk about some of the good in the league.
Some of the cash, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Kyler Murray, he was the one doing all the cooking against Russ and the Seahawks on Sunday night. So, I mean, it was a great game to watch. Especially interesting to see how things went down at the end of the game in overtime. But I mean,
yes, an absolute wild game. I mean, I'd say Russ is still cooking, and I mean, the Cardinals defense gave up 34 points, yet came in clutch there when they needed to. But it is good to see the Cardinals can just score more points than the other team if they need to.
well, I agree. Russ was cooking. I think Kyler had a little bit of that secret sauce he was using to.
Some of the secret Krabby Patty formula there.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a great game to watch. I mean, obviously, Seattle's defense continues to let them down. I mean, everybody knows Seattle's offense can put up as many points as they want realistically. I mean, they're going to put up points every game, but that defense just couldn't do anything to stop Kyler Murray. And, I mean, personally, it's fun for me to be able to, it's fun to watch this Cardinals team. I mean, they've got a lot of young talent. Watching Kyler out there slinging it, making plays. So I think Cliff Kingsbury's, he's still also growing. I think he's, you can tell every once in a while that he's still adjusting a little bit to life in the NFL, but he seems to be finally, he seems to have finally figured out what what they need to do to win in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, just gonna throw this out there about Seattle's defense. Do you know that they're actually ranked worse than as an overall defense than the Cowboys defense?
That's impressive.
It is.
I think Pete Carroll should be fired. But.
Oh, jeez. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I think about King Clisbury or whatever his name is.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, King Clisbury. But yeah, I think hopefully he learned a little bit that kicking a 41-yard field goal on second down in overtime with 5 minutes to go is not the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, he also made the mistake of icing his own kicker there at the end. So I think he did learn, hopefully he learned something there at the end, because that is not the way to close out a game. But I'm sure they're just happy they won that game, because that's a huge win for them.
Yeah, they're probably feeling good about that Isaiah Simmons draft pick now, basically saving the game for them.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Well, we interjected a little bit of cash money for you there with the Cardinals and the Seahawks, but I think ultimately it's time to get back to maybe not trash, but some imposters, some frauds
let's call
here
it
in the league.
Gold.
Fool's gold, yes.
Yes, and these two teams were actually playing each other.
Yes, you couldn't guess who they are, possibly.
No, there's no way. I haven't been calling one of these teams out every single week.
Yes, well, let's start with that team then.
Yeah, let's start with the Chicago Bears, who were leading the NFC North for 1 week before they put up an absolutely awful performance against the Rams. That team, I mean, look, here's the deal. Chicago's defense, yes, we all know it's good. But it doesn't matter how good of a defense you have if they have to be on the field the entire game, because they're going to get tired. And just everything that they tried to do on offense went wrong. They could never get a running game established. And if you've watched Chicago sports, well, Chicago football, over basically all of their existence, they rely on the running game. And when they can't get that going, usually things don't end well. Second issue, Nick Foles. Now, you can't put all the credit on him, because that's a strong defensive front. They were getting pressure on him all game. But he threw some horrible balls in that game and made some terrible decisions. However, I think there's just as much blame on Matt Nagy. And the reason why is they're trying to take all these deep shots throughout the game, where they're running, and they also ran a lot of slow developing plays, which does not work when your offensive line is not good enough to give your quarterback time to throw a good ball and to get your wide receivers downfield. So I don't know what the deal was with Matt Nagy. I mean, I get it, they got down early, but they just started trying to sling it, and the wide receivers couldn't get downfield. Nick Foles couldn't step into his throws. I mean, it looked horrible.
Yeah, I actually don't think Nick Foles, yes, he threw 2 interceptions, made some bad decisions, but at that point they were already down like 17-3. But I don't think it looked too bad in the beginning. He was fitting it into some tight locations, but yeah, there was a couple deep shots where he just did not have the time, and he put a lot of air under a couple of these throws. I think he had like 2, maybe 3, like pushing 3 seconds. I know there's one there at like their own like 10-yard line, and they ran a play action, and basically after he faked the handoff, he had to just chuck it up, but the receiver was running a double move route, and he wasn't even out of his break before Nick Foles had to throw the ball, and it was still only like 5 yards overthrown. So I think if Foles had like another like half second there, I mean that probably would have been a touchdown, considering the guy had like 7 yards of separation. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not all on Nick Foles. Part of it is the play calling, and part of it is the protection. Because if you don't have protection, you need to adjust your play calling. Because a lot of times you can't fix your protection in season just because offensive linemen get scooped up fast. You're not just going to
Yes.
find a starting caliber left tackle that's just playing, just sitting at home waiting for somebody to sign him during the season. That doesn't happen. So what Matt Nagy needs to do is he needs to adjust his play calling, especially against teams like the Rams. If a team's got a poor pass rush, even if they have a good pass rush, you can still mix in a deep shot every once in a while. But you've got to establish the run game, and you've got to call plays that at least have an underneath option for Foles to get to quick if they want to have any sort of offensive success in the future.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I think the Bears are still a playoff team by proxy of Minnesota being terrible out of nowhere, and the seventh playoff team added. So I still think well, I don't know. It's hard because the NFC West is so good, but I still think they find a way to sneak in. At this point, I'm thinking probably the 7 seed. But yeah, they don't look great, obviously. But
The Bears,
I mean,
Bears don't have an overly challenging schedule.
yeah,
Moving forward, I don't remember who all they play, but they've got a game against Minnesota, I know. Actually, I think they still have 2 games against Minnesota. And then they've got another game against Detroit. They've got a game against the Jaguars. Like, they're going to be a playoff team.
yeah,
It's just, I don't think anyone has any expectations for them once they get to the playoffs.
yeah. I think they're kind of a lucky version of the Eagles this year, to be honest. But I guess let's move on to a team that some, and probably many, think is actually a good team. The Los Angeles Rams.
Well, I talked about the Bears here quite a bit.
You want me to?
So I'll let you carry the conversation with the Rams.
Okay. So the Rams are 5-2. Arguably could have beat the Bills and been 6-1. But like I said, I think the Bills are actually not that good. And they still lost to them. They've beaten the 4 NFC East teams, which have a combined 6 wins. No, 7 wins now, I think. I mean, that's their, and the Bears. They beat the Bears. That's their 5 wins. So, does it look that impressive? I mean, we saw the Cowboys go 3-0 at the beginning of last year, playing Washington, the Giants, and the Dolphins our first 3 games. And what do we end up? 8-8. So, I think just because you start 5-2. It's kind of the same reason against the Bears, but I think the added playoff spot, helps both these teams. I don't know. To me, both these teams kind of look just like 8-8 teams that have had an easy beginning schedule. And both these teams have been benefited by having a good division where they are the 3rd best team. So then they end up playing, the 3rd best team from the other divisions, which usually are not very good, versus having, if you're the Packers, you're having to play the Saints and, the 49ers again. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, it can be tough to, actually beat good teams, and neither of these teams can. So to me, the Rams, even though they have a good defense, they seemingly have good receivers. Jared Goff is like average. They're 5-2, but call them 8-8 if you ask me.
Yeah, I think the Rams are a better team, not just because they beat Chicago, but I agree with you. They're going to struggle against better teams because of that Jared Goff bottleneck. He's fairly inconsistent. I mean, when he's locked in and focused, they can win games now. And he's got plenty of weapons. I mean, he's got Cooper Kupp, he's got Everett. I mean, the rest of their wide receivers are, like you said, supposedly pretty good bunch there.
Hey, Robert Woods.
Yeah,
I'd say
Woods.
he's the best one on the team, to be honest.
Right. Well, Cooper Kupp's the one who got all the money, but yeah, I mean he's got people to throw to. That's not the problem. I just think it's a lapse in focus sometimes. Some weeks he comes out there, plays a good game. Next week he goes out there, really inconsistent performance. So I think that's a bit of a bottleneck for him. Also don't think he has much of a... Jared Goff's not a quarterback I'd take if I'm trying to lead a comeback in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the type of player he is. Don't really see that type of fire in him. But it's also their running game, I think, is a little bit of a problem for them. They got rid of Gurley, who's done a lot of the work for them over the last couple of years. Granted, no Gurley in his last year wasn't the same running back we've seen, but they've struggled to really kind of fill some of that void that they had 2-3 years ago, where they could rely heavily on their running game. So yeah, I mean, they've got a good defense, and again, a good defense is going to get you places, but against a team like Kansas City, I mean, they're just going to get shredded. So I think I agree with you. I think these are both imposters. They're mediocre teams at best with good defenses. So against bad teams, they look a lot better than what they really are.
Yeah. Well, if you've made it this far, it's time for my little wide receiver proposal teamwork. As far as trades go, I'll ask a couple questions here. What is a trade that you think would be a good trade for any team to make as we're getting closer to the trade deadline? And, what would you think about the Cowboys trading Amari Cooper to the Packers for maybe a first or second round pick?
So here's what I'm going to say about the Amari Cooper. It literally can't happen because the Packers are already restricted financially.
Look, we'll take one of your terrible players that is making money for no reason.
We don't have too many of those. It's pretty much all tied up in Rodgers.
Well, we'll take Aaron Rodgers.
But here's the deal. Packers still have to re-sign Aaron Jones, and they've got to make a decision on David Bakhtiari. Both of those guys can command a lot of money. I'd be interested to see what the Packers do with Aaron Jones because Jamal Williams' contract is up too. So maybe if Aaron Jones gets too pricey, I don't know, maybe you see him roll with Jamal Williams and retain Bakhtiari. I mean, it'd be a bit of a shocking move to me, but it's something I could see them doing if Aaron Jones is demanding top-tier money. As far as a trade going, I don't think Amari Cooper works. I do think Dallas has another wide receiver that works, though. And it's someone that I don't think Dallas is going to be able to retain. It's Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup has 2 years left on his contract. He's still on a rookie deal. I believe he's making like $770,000 or something this year. Granted, his pay is going to go up because he's going to get that proven player bonus or whatever. But it'll still be a manageable contract for sure. Now, granted, Dallas knows the value they have in him. Wide receiver is a position of depth that Dallas has, so they might as well get rid of Gallup now because they're not going to have him in 2 years. Like, let's just be honest. You've got Cooper, you've got CeeDee Lamb, and frankly, you're going to roll with those two guys over trying to retain Michael Gallup. So Gallup's going to be a pretty decent asking price. It'll probably still be at least a second rounder. I could even see Dallas maybe asking for a first. I don't know if they'd get it.
I don't know. Maybe somebody like us, whenever we traded for Cooper, gave up a first rounder. So maybe.
I'm seeing more of maybe like a second rounder, maybe like a second and a fourth or fifth round, something like that. Maybe would be something the Packers would be more likely to offer. Granted, I mean, that would be hugely beneficial to Green Bay's offense. Al Lazard is actually back at practice this week, which is a little bit ahead of what I was expecting to hear him back. So, if you think about it, you have Devontae Adams, Michael Gallup, Al Lazard. That makes Green Bay's wide receiver room look quite a bit different because you can push Marquez Valdez-Scantling completely out of that. Never have to see him again. With his inconsistent drops and everything like that. But that's the trade I'd like to see. Now, I will say I saw that the Packers have inquired about Will Fuller from the Texans. I'd like that move too. The only thing is I'm not sure it makes sense for the Texans to actually deal him. Because
unless the Texans just want to get rid of anybody that is good around Deshaun Watson.
Well, Bill O'Brien's not there anymore, but
True.
Texans still have the Texans. They're going to have to do a bit of a rebuild, but they have already got some of the positions. They've got their quarterback. Their wide receiver room's fine. So, Will Fuller's obviously one of Deshaun Watson's favorite targets, if not his favorite target. So I'm not sure I see the Texans giving him up. I mean, Will Fuller's probably a first rounder as well. I mean, I think wide receivers are going to be a big part of what's dealt this year. So I'd like to see Green Bay trade for a wide receiver. I'd also like to see us maybe trade for a defensive lineman. I was kind of hoping for Carlos Dunlap from the Bengals, but I saw he got traded earlier today.
Okay, Mark, hear me out. A double player deal for you guys.
DeMarcus Lawrence and Amari Cooper, and suddenly you guys can re-sign anybody?
No, I was actually talking about the other Texas team, J.J. Watt and Will Fuller.
Again, the issue that runs into there is the contract.
Well, if you even thought about DeMarcus Lawrence, good luck with that.
No, I was joking.
Yeah, no, I know.
But the issue that comes into Green Bay, and I think this is going to affect a lot of teams because the cap's actually expected to go down next year. So I think that's going to make a lot of teams more hesitant to take some of these higher priced players, just out of fear that they won't be able to retain some of their own talent. But I don't know. Trade deadline's November 3rd, I believe, so we don't have too much longer to wait.
Oh boy, what's going to be more exciting, the trade deadline or the election?
Oh boy. Okay, let's move on. I don't want to do that.
No, I know. That was just a joke. I
know. But
because it's clearly the NFL trade deadline.
Right. Do you have anything you'd like to see from the trade deadline? Maybe a player you'd like to see Cowboys get rid of or acquire?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind the Michael Gallup trade, even though I like him a lot, because I do think there's a couple guys that we have. Cedric Wilson, I mean, had 2 touchdowns against Seattle. Noah Brown, who's kind of been one of our like perennial wide receiver fours, kind of on our practice squad some. So I do think we have some guys that would be good enough to, I mean, especially right now. I mean, Michael Gallup, if we didn't trade him, his value is just going to go down purely on lack of use. So, yeah, I feel like you don't really need like 3-star receivers. Like, I don't think the Buccaneers are going to have, ton of, even though they have like 3 absolutely great receivers once they get Antonio Brown. I mean, all 3 of their value, I think, individually kind of dips down just from lack of use. So I wouldn't mind trading Michael Gallup. I guess the other thing, this might be too far out of the box, especially for Jerry Jones probably, but maybe trade Zeke for like as much as you can get. Like, you could trade him, just draft a running back. I mean, there's plenty. I mean, you have that Clemson running back, Etienne. You have Chuba Hubbard, I think is the name, Oklahoma State. I think if you could get, what do you think you could get for Zeke right now? Cap willing, obviously.
That's a tough.
As far as picks go, as far as picks,
it's going to depend on the team, honestly, because I think some teams are going to be concerned about him in the locker room. I mean, Zeke's got a personality, that's for sure. I mean, it depends on, because even if we weren't worried about like the cap going down this year, with that contract, part of it would depend on if the Cowboys were willing to eat any of his contract.
No, none of it. I don't want to eat any. I don't want to eat any of that contract.
If they're not willing to eat any of that contract, I don't think you get a first rounder.
But we have to get a first rounder.
I think you might be able to get a couple day 2 picks.
Nah, it's first rounder or bust.
Now, I think you maybe get a player in that trade too. You guys might.
We need a corner. Let's get Kendall Fuller in a pick.
Yeah, like that's probably more likely because you'd probably see that team want to offset some of their own cap. So maybe they have an area of depth they want to deal to you guys, and they'll send a pick over as well. But I don't know. I don't think it's realistic to see Zeke being traded. So.
No, I don't either. But I just would like to see it.
Yeah, it's understandable.
All right, let's get into these week's picks because that's enough about the Cowboys. We're trash. Yeah. We're garbage. Well, so this week's picks, Falcons, Panthers.
Hey, I'm going Panthers because even if the Falcons somehow get ahead, they're going to choke it away.
Yeah, I don't know. I woke up this morning thinking I'm going to choose Falcons, so.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the worst pick in the world. But, because, I mean, the Falcons can score. But, I don't know. Next, we got the Steelers-Ravens. Probably the most intriguing matchup for this week.
Oh, this is hard.
Well, look, I've been picking the Steelers all year long. So I got to pick them again.
Yeah.
I'm picking their defense to contain Lamar Jackson, and I'm counting on Big Ben being somewhat consistent enough to score enough. So.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers as well. I don't know. I just feel like I don't like picking the Ravens in big games. That's going to be my reason.
Think this could be a potential big brain for us?
I mean, do you think... I mean, by picking the Steelers, are we saying the Steelers are the best team in the league?
Well, no. But
to be 7-0? Are they better than the Ravens?
Well, I'm looking at some of these other matchups just ahead, and
well, let's just keep going for now. Let's just keep going.
Next, we've got the Rams at the Dolphins, which, special note, this is going to be Tua's first start. So I guess this partially depends on how much stock you're buying into Tua.
Uh, yes. Just a second. Let me see something real quick. If you
Well,
want
I'm going to go
to,
ahead and make my pick. I'm picking the Rams because even though we talked about that they're mediocre, they are going to be able to get a good pass rush on Tua. And if there's anything we've seen over the last couple years, it's that young quarterbacks do not do well under pressure typically. So I'm going to say Aaron Donald gets to Tua a couple times, and that gets into his head a little bit. So I'm going Rams.
see, what you're missing is that Tua is going to get pulled out of the game at the end of the third quarter, and they're going to be losing by maybe 13 points. But Fitzmagic is going to come back in, even though he may not want to, and say, you know what, guys, let me do it again. And they're going to win the game. Calling it now. Remember whenever I picked them against the 49ers
Yes.
and they won?
Yes.
Yeah, same thing's going to happen here. Jared Goff is going to fall apart.
All right. Well, be interested to see.
I know. Some bold picks here.
Here's a game.
That's why I'm going with the Jets.
Hey, if there's anybody that's picked against the Chiefs more than anybody else, it's probably been me. And even
Yes.
I have to pick the Chiefs here because, like I've said almost every week, the Jets would go 0-16 against the 0-16 Lions. So.
Yeah. That was pretty obvious. I think the next one's also pretty obvious. The Packers are going to beat the Vikings again.
Yeah, this is, this one should be, it was a blowout in week 1. It should still be a blowout here. So, even with the Vikings coming off a bye. Next, we've got the Colts at the Lions. I think I'm going to pick the Lions here. I trust the Lions' offense. As long as Kenny Galladay's healthy, that offense seems to be clicking a lot better. So.
Yeah, I think this becomes a battle of which quarterback doesn't try to do too much. And if there's one quarterback that always tries to do too much, it's Philip Rivers. And I think that probably costs them again. And I think maybe this time next week, we're discussing once again, except maybe more seriously this time, is it time for Jacoby Brissett? So yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions as well.
All right, and next we've got the Raiders at the Browns. I'm going with the Raiders.
Yes, me as well, because the Browns are also frauds.
They are, and Baker Mayfield just lost one of his wide receivers with Odell Beckham going down with a torn ACL.
Nah, I think it actually benefits them that Odell is not going to be on their team anymore.
Well, it's
I
another
think
weapon taken away from Baker. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, while true, I think Baker tries to force it to him sometimes, and that's why he throws interceptions sometimes. So I think he gets back to his true favorite target, which is Jarvis Landry, and but I still think the Raiders are going to win. So
Yeah. Well, next we've got the Titans at the Bengals. I've already penciled this one in, but I'm picking the Titans, and I'm assuming you're doing the same.
yeah, not don't need to discuss too much here. So
Yeah, this one shouldn't be close. Rip Joe Burrow, but
well, now we have the Patriots and the Bills.
so I have tried to pick the Patriots in matchups like this year, and it hasn't worked out for me too well. So I'm going to go with the Bills just because I haven't seen anything from Cam Newton that says he's going to change. So he's kind of the reason. I mean, his inability to make average passes puts their chances of winning this game in jeopardy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bills in an ugly game, like 13-9 or something like that.
Yeah, that's probably what it'll be. Maybe like 13-12. Just
Yeah,
a lot of field goals. But
yeah.
next we've got the Chargers at the Broncos. I've got to go with the Chargers here because I support my boy Justin Herbert. And
Yeah, I think you've convinced me with the whole Herbert thing, and I think against, not good teams, I think the Chargers can win, so.
next we've got the 49ers at the Seahawks.
This is difficult.
I'm going with the Seahawks because the Seahawks can probably easily outscore this 49ers offense. Even with their bad defense, I think they can still easily outscore them.
Yeah, I think this is hard because Chris Carson's hurt, Carlos Hyde is hurt, and Travis Homer's hurt. They're three running backs going into this year. So, I don't know. I'm going to pick San Francisco. I feel like San Francisco's kind of returned to form. I know they're not going to have Jeff Wilson. I don't even know who their running back's going to be either, but I feel like maybe their defense will be able to stop Russell Wilson like last year at like the 1 yard line. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Next, we've got the Saints at the Bears. I've been calling the Bears frauds all season, and it's finally been revealed, so I'm picking the Saints against the Bears again because the Bears are terrible.
And that's why I am, as much as I like Nick Foles, I have to go with the Saints.
Next, we've got what will probably be another ugly game between your Cowboys and the Eagles.
Okay, can I just say, these might be the two worst prime time games of this whole season. The Cowboys and the Eagles Sunday night. Oh, honestly, all three night games are just they're just terrible. Falcons, Panthers, Cowboys, Eagles, Buccaneers, Giants. Three horrible games, first of all. And I think if you pick the Cowboys in another game this season, you're a moron. So the Eagles.
Yeah, for reasons you just stated, I'm going with the Eagles as well.
We're on our way to Tune 14, baby.
Has there been any news if Andy Dalton's going to play this week?
Oh, no. It's going to be our seventh round rookie that we drafted.
Yeah, another reason to pick the Eagles. And then, like you mentioned, we've got the Buccaneers at the Giants. The Buccaneers should absolutely decimate the Giants. So,
yeah, I think this is going to be a massacre.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance Tom Brady gets to take a little bit of a break at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, he might not even need to throw for like. They could win this game with like him throwing like 100 yards and touchdown and just run the ball all over the Giants. I mean.
Yep. Well, that's all of the games this week. So we've made our picks. Does anything stand out to you as a big brain pick?
I mean, maybe the Lions.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. The Colts defense has kind of earned a reputation this season as being elite, even though I think some of that might be a little bit overstated. But I agree. I think that might be a big brain pick of the week.
And I know you were saying the Steelers. I don't know if you just want to make the Steelers our surefire guarantee pick of the week or something like that.
Ooh, you know what? I like that. I'm not sure they're a big brain pick because, you know, obviously both teams are good, but Steelers are, you know, they're undefeated. So,
Lock it in.
yep, locking it in.
All
So
right. Somehow the NBA is still maintaining to be somewhat relevant, and this would be because I guess they said. Now I'm not sure how this transpired here, but if the NBA said they were starting in December, and then LeBron said, "Well, if we start in December, I am not going to be playing," or if it was speculation that the NBA was going to start in December, and it was also speculation that LeBron said that he would opt out if it started in December. I'm not really sure what all happened. It might just all be rumors at this point, but
it was a player who reported about LeBron.
okay.
I don't remember which player it was. I believe it was someone on the Lakers.
It was Danny Green.
Like no, it was one of their bench players that I hadn't heard
So
much of.
Danny Green.
But yeah, I think at this point it's looking like the NBA is going to try to start in December. I've seen December 22nd as the potential start date. But basically what the player, or whoever it was that released it, said that, you know, there's a lot of players who have played a lot this year, and with this short of a break, they just think that a lot of players, like some of the players like LeBron, who are a little bit older, might just choose to not play in games for the first couple weeks or the first month, just because he said he wouldn't see them doing that. You know, they'd obviously still be with the team, they'd be working out, they'd be practicing, they just wouldn't be getting that game day stress. Personally, I have a hard time believing that someone like LeBron would sit out the entire first month. I could maybe see him maybe not playing in like heavy weeks, like if they have like 4 games in a week or something, you know, maybe not playing all those games, like maybe taking more games off, like rest days. But I don't know. I'd have a hard time believing a competitor would want to do that.
Yeah, I also okay. I have two thoughts here. Is that A, does anyone really want to see the NBA again in 2 months? To me, I would say no. I would say just like start this on start the season on February 1st with a 41 game schedule, no All-Star break. And the other thing is, if you do start the season in December, why would anybody opt out? They literally had a 4 month rest from March to like August. April, May, June, July. I mean, that's like almost a 5 month rest like period. Like I don't get some of these NBA guys. I know like that you just played hard to win the championship if you're the Lakers, but it's just like give me a break with some of this like we're too tired. It's like okay, you literally had a 4.5 month break this season, and now you're having another 2 month break. So good nightmares. Bunch of crybabies, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't see anybody sitting out, really. I just, again, like I said, maybe you see some players, and this is normal for older players, anyways, to, you know, take some rest days during the season. So maybe you just see some of them take a couple more at the beginning. But
Yeah.
I just don't see any players, unless they're injured, doing that. Plus,
Well, that brings.
seeding's important too. So
Oh, true.
those early season wins still matter for seeding. So
Well, that brings me to my next question, I guess, which is over the last 5 seasons, over the last 5 years of playoff play, which sport between the NFL, the MLB, and the NBA has had the most entertaining playoffs?
well, it's clearly been the MLS every year.
Oh, true. So true.
Hmm, this is tough.
Well, before
Okay,
you say anything, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
well, I'm not making a decision on a professional. I will say, if you're talking postseason, March Madness is always the most exciting for me.
Mark,
I
I'm
know
talking
it's
about the last 5 years of these three professional sports.
well, it's not the NBA for me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say.
um, Especially since the Bulls haven't done much.
Well, I'm just talking about like if you weren't really a hardcore fan of any team.
No. I know. But yeah, I the NBA playoffs just seem to drag on and on and on.
Yeah, that and they just don't have very many competitive teams.
Yeah, you've kind of got the top four, and then everybody else. It's just kind of like, all right, we're waiting for you to lose. Let's take 2 weeks for you to lose a series. But
Yeah.
um,
I know it's hard because let's just walk it back real quick. So this past year, the NFL, it was the Chiefs versus the 49ers. The Chiefs make another comeback in the Super Bowl after coming back several times throughout the playoffs. The Titans upset the 14-2 Ravens. Uh, I think everyone likes Mike Vrabel now. Uh, the year before that was the Patriots and the Rams, one of the most boring Super Bowls. Yet you also had the Rams and the Saints in the championship game, where the non-call pass interference. Maybe you see the Saints in there. The offside call on the Chiefs cost them the game against the Patriots. The year before that, you have the Eagles beating the Patriots in a wild Super Bowl where a lot of records were broken, and that you had the Minneapolis Miracle. Once again, there's really not too much to talk about in the AFC because the Patriots. And, that's like the last 3 years I can just think of off the top of my head. And then in baseball, you had last year, storybook for the Nationals. The year before that, the Red Sox beat the Dodgers. And then the year before that, you have the Astros beat the Dodgers. And in both those two seasons, I know the Astros beat the Yankees last year, and in that 2017 season. Um, so, yeah, so that's kind of the walk back a little bit, if that helps make your decision.
okay, so it's gonna be a baseball playoff for me, and that is going to be based off the fact that you know, and I'm not saying playoff football isn't exciting, because it is. I love watching playoff football, but I also just like watching any other football game in general. Playoff baseball has so much more energy in it than typical baseball. Like, the stakes are just so much higher. You see these crazy comebacks. Like, you kind of get the feeling that anybody can win, and that's kind of what we saw last year with the wild card Washington Nationals winning their first World Series. And part of me almost wants to pick last year's MLB playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, nah, I think overall the NFL is more exciting. I think one of the reasons the NFL playoffs is more exciting is because they kind of have to play at that level every game in the regular season. So, I don't know. I do agree. I mean, it's neck and neck for me. Like, I just want to make that clear. It is absolutely neck and neck. But the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, that was one of the wildest playoffs I have ever seen. at least in the past few years. So, yeah, I think NFL for me slightly edges it out.
No, I get that. And again, it's real close to me too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love NFL football. I just feel that you see a bigger difference in the energy of the game and the players in the MLB postseason compared to the MLB regular season than you do in the NFL regular season compared to the NFL postseason. That's just my take.
Yes, I get that. I get that. Well, just for a little scoop into the NCAA pond, uh, I guess after this past week where Graham Mertz was pretty much perfect, he decided to, go out and party and catch the the deadly cough.
Yeah, well, he got it, and then our backup quarterback got it. Now, let me get this straight. Graham Mertz was supposed to be our second string quarterback going into the season. So the next man up was going to be Vandeboom, who was technically our fourth string quarterback. So he was going to be the one who was going to be starting this week against Nebraska. And then there was a little bit of an outbreak. I believe 6 players and 6 staff got it, including our head coach, Paul Christ, and Barry Alvarez, the Wisconsin athletic director, just said it's the responsible thing to just go ahead and suspend all football activities for the next 7 days. Granted, anybody who tests positive in the Big Ten essentially is out 21 days, and then they also have to undergo cardiovascular testing, I believe, and they're to be monitored after that. So, it's already pretty crippling to have to miss a player for 21 days. And now if they've got an outbreak, if you start thinking, well, if more and more players keep getting it, Wisconsin potentially puts themselves out for the next 3 weeks as well. So it's a little
Well,
unfortunate, but
first of all, that is one of the dumbest rules. Sitting out 21 days? Like, that's... Why?
yeah,
That goes past all just like the CDC and health officials' guidelines.
well,
It makes literally no sense.
it's only an 8-game season. So essentially, if you get it, you miss half your season.
The Big Ten should have just not even come back to play if they're going to make up dumb rules like this. But, yeah, I don't... It says Big Ten teams must play at least 6 games for conference title eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, look, Wisconsin is going to go out and play next week, I'm sure. It's just, no, I'm not sure. I would assume since Paul Christ got it, I don't know if they're holding the coaches to the same standard as the players. I don't know if they'd maybe have him, if they'd allow him to coach up in a coaching box or something like that. Or if they'd have Barry Alvarez, our athletic director, who's filled in for games in the past, if he would coach the team. But my guess is they are still going to try and go out and play. Now, granted, they have to suspend football activities for 7 days, so maybe next week doesn't happen either. But they're probably still going to try to do everything in their power to at least get to those 6 games.
Yeah. Well, I guess my other question is, did you think that Indiana 2-point conversion was actually a 2-point conversion?
No, I did not. But you know what? I love to see it. I love to see people trying to win games like that. So, and I'm happy to see Penn State lose. So
I am also happy to see Penn State lose,
but
and just the Big Ten lose in general.
well, yeah, they're the best conference. Haters gonna hate. But
Well, they're the best conference because Ohio State's in there.
I know. But and Michigan.
Yeah. Hey, they beat Minnesota, who was actually ranked, so they did something for once.
Yeah, it's true. It's like Jim Harbaugh's first ranked win is at Michigan.
I know, it's like we even forget Jim Harbaugh as an actual coach.
Yep.
But, well, I guess that brings us to the best part of the show, and that is the sports we don't care about. And, you know, the first thing I want to talk about is tennis once again, because that just seems like, of the sports that we care the least about, we care about it the most, if that makes sense. At least I do. Uh, just throwing it out there, Sasha Zverev, the tall, lanky German player, young man, I think he's like 23, beat Diego Schwartzman from Argentina in the ATP 500 event final. I know I mentioned that a little bit last week. And Zverev got to the U.S. Open final against Dominic Thiem this past year, was up 2-0 and ultimately lost. And this one, he takes care of business quite easily, winning 6-2, 6-1. If only he could do that in a Grand Slam. Also, Justin Thomas was winning after a couple days of whatever that golf tournament was. He doesn't win the golf tournament, even though he ends up shooting a minus 22. He loses to some other golfer who I do not know the name of, who shot a minus 23, which is, those scores are pretty impressive, obviously. And if you've never played golf, then I just don't think you know quite how hard it is to actually play. Also, if you're into, do you know what sport Khabib plays? Is that the UFC?
Yes, I believe that's UFC.
Well, he retired after he won.
Yep.
So that's about all I know from that. I don't even know who he beat. But I guess, I guess he's good. Oh, I did see he makes victory hamburgers. And the main criticism about that was apparently they were well done. And I guess some people like to eat raw hamburgers, which is quite odd to me. But
Well, I will say that's wrong, but it's a better celebration than something that I sent to you earlier this week. Now, I don't remember who this guy is, and I think he's the UFC or MMA or something like that. He's a fighter as well. But this guy, for his celebrations, has people spit in his shoe. So this time it was the Nelk Boys, who are some YouTubers, and had them back there and had them all spit in his shoe, and then he poured a beer into his shoe and drank it out of his shoe, which is simply one of the most disgusting celebrations I could think of. Absolutely appalling. Ugh.
Mark, that gives me a really great idea for our fantasy football punishment for the loser. And it doesn't have to be beer, but just drinking maybe like a Coke, like a can of Coke out of a shoe, out of your own shoe that somebody else spits in. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you want to have somebody else spit in it, but just drinking a can of Coke out of your own shoe would be a pretty good. That's pretty. Oh man, that's how you get AIDS.
That's how you get a lot of diseases. I mean, look, like this isn't the only time he's done this. Like, I believe this is his tradition. So he's probably just getting random people to spit in a shoe.
Yeah, that is just wacky, 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 wacky. But hey, what can you say? I guess our other punishment could be, you know, having to inquire about the MLS. What do you think?
That would be cruel and unusual punishment, which is not allowed by U.S. law. So I don't think we could do that, and I'm not even sure how we do that because, to be honest, all of us care about the MLS about as much as the Cowboys' offensive line cared to defend Andy Dalton after he got absolutely plastered. So I don't even know how we'd arrange to get something for the MLS set up because I don't even know what their schedule looks like.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think we care enough to really find out either, so.
No, we don't. But, well, that pretty much covers all the sports news from this week. This has been episode 7 of the MJ Sports Podcast. We thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Oh, yeah.